Blessing and I went to Japan, and we went to Team Asobi, everybody. We didn't just go... There we go. We didn't just go for Kojima. We went to go to Team Asobi.
Primarily to PlayStation.
Yeah, primarily to PlayStation to see a little bit about behind the scenes of Astro Bot, how they made it. And it was a really interesting event. Blessing, you want to talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, it was really cool. So like I mentioned earlier, right, the Team Asobi is located within like the Sony like headquarters in Tokyo. And so we got there, went to like a meeting room where like they gave us the presentation where they talked about the pitch that they gave PlayStation to like for the game for Astro Bot, which is really cool. And then they talked a bit about like all their core pillars of what makes Astro Bot Astro Bot. The 4 pillars being crafted gameplay, techno magic, PlayStation Fiesta, and overflowing charm. And then they went deep into like these things. I'm not gonna break down the entire PowerPoint because we ain't got the time.
But it was really cool though to show like they stress this like, hey, this is pretty much the exact presentation that we showed to PlayStation that got this game approved.
That's awesome.
They said of course they removed some of the budgets and everything like that, but this is pretty much it. So they gave us the walkthrough, and I thought that was an interesting and kind of a really impressive presentation just because they had the release date at the ending, and the release date was September 2024, and this was 3.5 years ago. This game only had a 3.5 year development. 65
people working at that studio.
Insane.
And I think it was a breath of fresh air kind of hearing about their studio structure and how they work, because it sounded so creative, sounded very much like you are what we need right now as far as like a studio, especially a studio at PlayStation that I think stands in a unique space compared to what we look at as like the big PlayStation studios.
Sure.
Because when we talk about PlayStation studios, we're talking about Naughty Dog, we're talking about Guerrilla, we're talking about Sucker Punch, we're talking about, and Sucker Punch, not as big of a studio as a Naughty Dog, right? Or like a Sony Santa Monica, but we associate a lot of these studios with huge budget, long development time, big old games that are going to be about the narrative and action or whatever. And we love these games, but it was really cool to hear them sit us down and walk us through, hey, we want to make stuff that's family friendly. We want to make stuff that like works for us as a 65 person development studio. Not to spoil the interview we did with Nicholas Doucette, but like one of the things he mentioned was that I think Roger might have asked about like expanding studio size. Like, do you guys plan like, where do you guys see yourself as far as bringing on new people, expanding your size to something bigger, whatever? And one of the answers that I thought was very interesting was Nicholas saying that if we were to, let's say, double our studio size, we would be making more games. We don't want to expand the size of our games.
That's awesome.
We want to keep the size of our games. But yeah, like make that a thing, right? We want to do that consistently. And so I thought that was really cool to hear them talk about. But yeah, like, Astro Bot, I think, lives up to a lot of what they talked about, right? Like, again, going through those 4 bullet points, the one that like stood out to me, and the one that I'm so fascinated when we get to the conversation about the feature is the PlayStation Fiesta bullet point, because they timed it for September 2024 because it lines up with the 30th anniversary of PlayStation, and so that gave them a good opportunity to go, hey, let's look at the heritage, let's look at the legacy of PlayStation and highlight all these franchises in the way that we did in Astro's Playroom, but do it in a full-fledged game that has is 8 to, I forget how, I don't think they said 8 hours, and I'll say 8 hours.
No, they said 12 to 15.
12 to 15
is the normal developer thing.
Yeah,
exactly.
if you're taking your time. I mean, it took me 16 hours platinum, so we'll give them that. But yeah, like in a full game, and they did that along with highlighting again the techno magic, which is essentially the idea of taking the PlayStation hardware and making it feel like something cool and worthwhile, right? Doing really cool things with the DualSense, which is how you get things like all the haptic feedback and a lot of the details within that. Is how you get what they're doing with like the fidelity of the game, but then also like highlighting PlayStation hardware within the game. Like they talk a lot about that. Right now, if you're watching the video version, Bear has pulled up like some of the slides they're showing us that were like showing off like the original pitch, which had like a lot of the art already done and laid out, which is really cool. And you can see the characters, you can see like, some of what they're talking about as far as highlighting those PlayStation characters.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was also interesting because after this, they sat us down for more focused PowerPoints, talking about the way that they do haptics and just walking us through how they build a boss and how they build levels and how fast they're able to do it. The interesting thing about the way that they've built the studio is that everyone contributes to ideas. ideas. They made sure to say that. They made sure to express that. They had a massive wall full of Post-it notes with all of their little scribbles and potential ideas for abilities. But yeah, everybody from QA testers to all the way up to the head of the studio pitches ideas once every 2 weeks. They sat down together and they came up with these big ideas.
Yeah. And you got the sticky notes too in the video.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, which is cool. Like walking by this and seeing all the ideas just on the wall.
And you say the big ideas, but these are ideas big and small. These are like enemies. These are mechanics. These are levels.
Everything.
The pink looked like it was the topic, so there was like levels, abilities, whatever. So
yeah, they didn't want us to go too close into it, so I tried to stay away. But yeah, no, we saw a bunch of different things going on there. So
they walked us. One of the ones they walked us through were like the monkey hands, like the monkey that gets strapped to your back that has the big hands that you can take things and throw them with. And that's, started off as a Post-it note, like all their ideas, right? And like somebody writes it down, they, sit down as a group, talk it through, walk it through, like, make a prototype within the game, and they showed us like the very basic version of it, which I forget if it was even a monkey at first or if they just had like a little
so they went through multiple versions of that one specifically. They said they did the great thing where they walked through all the different versions and what the problems that they were trying to solve, avoiding a monkey. They're like, it's boring, let's try some of this, let's try this, and they're just like, it's a monkey.
That's the easiest way to think. They're like, monkey on the back is too literal, like it's too like that's the easy thing, what else can we do with this? And then it just came back to, hey, sometimes straightforward is the right answer. And so we ended up back on the monkey as the thing.
And it always struck me of how scrappy this team is, right? Like, and how small it is. The wild thing when they were showing the animations and just talking about how this is a big Mario like video game, right? You have to, everything you touch and interact with has to move, has to have some type of animation. And I raised my hand. I'm like, how many animators do you have on this team? They said 8.
Yeah,
8 people, 8 animators doing everything. That's including all of those bots doing all their specific animations. That's 8 people. It's really impressive how fast they're able to work, and it's seemingly they're able to be creative, and they're also able to release a game within 3.5 years, which is magical in the AAA space.
I mean, calling that shot too, September 2024, and then them hitting it, and then it being this good, like hell yeah, so damn impressive.
No, it's absolutely incredible. Do you have anything else you want to say about the event before we go into the interview?
No, I think it's just that it was like, once again, very refreshing being there and like hearing how they talk about the way that they've crafted a studio culture, and like, they have a very diverse team as well. Like that was one of the things that you notice when you go to the studio that's located in Tokyo and you walk in and there's people from all sorts of different backgrounds. And that's something that Nicholas talked about as well, of like, wanting to have we're a studio that is worldwide. And so we're wanting to like be able to appeal to that and have people that represent the world. And so I thought that was really cool as well. But like I look at this studio and it is like this is the most Nintendo studio you have at PlayStation, just based on all the conversations, based on how they talked about the games. And I was like, dude, they've shot up to being one of like my favorite studios, maybe not just at PlayStation,
S-tier,
period. Yeah,
right?
like they've hit that S tier as far as, you guys have something here. Like you found like not just a niche, but you found something special within like the organization of PlayStation that you're bringing to the table. And like you're seeing how people are reacting to Astro Bot.
A weird little thing jumping off of that I think is so important is that I say easy, it's very difficult, but it's easy to just have references and have cameos and like, there's Mario Galaxy type influences, and it reminds us of the platforming or the gimmicks and the changes in abilities and all this stuff feels good. But it's the little things about platformers that for me really like tip this over the top, where every level ending with the opportunity for like a bonus when you do like the launch where you can like hit the thing, that little bit of extra fun that you get, that reminds me so much of the old school 2D days of platform games, and having the hub world be fun and have its own secrets and its own bots to get and own challenges, and the interactive credits, even having a thank you for playing screen. Like I just feel like there's so many little things that like the people that made this game love video games. Dude, that's so clear.
Starting each level with like the flight onto the thing, and sometimes you can get a collectible.
Puzzle
sometimes
piece,
you can get like coins.
Sometimes you
or
crash
whatever.
land, sometimes you don't. Like,
exactly.
That
levels having secret exits.
I mean, that comes back to the bullet point of crafted gameplay, and under that, right, like they talk about wanting to have simple, rich controls. That's why there's only like 3 buttons in this game. It is jump, it is punch, and then there's like whatever special ability you can get. They talk about having memorable level design, right? Like the desert level was the example they gave of this is being structured like an hourglass here, right? They wanted each level to be an adventure, and so under that, they talk about having every level having a unique theme, a unique gameplay, a big wow moment, crafted tempo, meaning they want people moment to moment, like have something exciting that they're doing, lots of secrets, and then every level is structured to be around 10 minutes of of play time, right? With the exception of the challenge levels, of course. But
course.
like that was their rubric. That was kind of their Bible going into it, and like
That worked.
Nailed
it worked, right?
Yeah.
Like there's something about that formula that absolutely knocks it out the park.
Yeah, and I was really impressed when they showed off the. We sat down with a gameplay, someone on the gameplay team who was showing how they actually build the levels in real time. So they're able to move around things and play those levels immediately.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
they're moving fast. They created a new engine, or I don't know if it was a fully new engine or if it was like an off branch of what they've created. But they basically said that going from Playroom to Astro Bot, they redid the engine. Like it's different. It's leaner. It's meaner. It is from the ground up different. So they were able to make those iterations really fast. And even when they were doing the boss fights, right, the way that they would do it is they would have a programmer and an animator, and they would just kind of go off and just like 2 to 3 people just make an entire prototype. And those prototypes look very, very similar to what we have at the ending of the game, which is incredible.
I am blown away by the boss fights in this
Yeah.
game. Every single one it's just so inventive and fun, and every phase being so unique and different. And I've said this a lot about Astro Bot in terms of just the normal levels, but the boss things I think it's even extra true. You always know exactly what the game's asking you to do, even if it's asking you to do it for the very first time.
Sure.
Yeah.
Like you always know exactly where the target is, and
Visual
like,
language is great.
yes, and sometimes it is just a big flashing red thing, but the big flashing red thing might be hit by an ability in a way that you've never done yet. But it's very clear what you're doing. The music is thrilling and it gets your blood pumping. The octopus fight, that level, the entire level where it starts off, you have the frog punching hands, which that is probably an example of they had a different animal and they're like, I guess we'll make it a frog eventually. But when you start that off and it's Spider-Man-esque where you're like swinging from the little sticky like
Rollers.
like the cranes or whatever the hell, it's like, man, this is so sick. And ending with that boss fight that is so much fun. This was what I actually played at Summer Game Fest. And so for anybody that was like, wow, Tim was so high on Astro after Summer Game Fest, why? It's because I played that level.
Yeah.
Like the way that boss fight just continues to get more and more interesting. And then when the sea splits and you're kind of in like a platform thing with the giant wave coming at you, I'm like, holy crap, this is the second boss in this game. Like, what do we
What
have
else do they
left?
have?
And there's a lot that they had left. But that to me is one of my favorite moments in video games of the year.
Well, we'll talk a lot more about Astro and answer your super chats in a little bit, but right now we're going to head over and do a little interview with Nico that Bless and I filmed. See you guys in a bit.
This episode's brought to you by Shady Rays. Get ready for the season ahead with quality shades built to last. Our friends over at Shady Rays have you covered with premium polarized shades that won't break the bank. Shady Rays is an independent sunglasses company that offers an unrivaled product that's just as good as any expensive pair that we've worn. Durable frames and world-class optics for all outdoor adventures. With an extensive array of styles and colors, you're bound to find the perfect pair of Shady Rays sunglasses. Y'all know I've been outside a lot in the sun playing some Pokemon Go, and it's such a great experience wearing my Shady Rays when I'm out and about looking dope. Every pair of sunglasses is backed by lost or broken replacements. If you lose or break your pair, even on day one, they told us they will send you a brand new pair, no questions asked. Exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal. Head to shadyrays.com and use code KINDAFUNNY for 50% off 2 or more pairs of shades. You can try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. shadyrays.com, use code KINDAFUNNY for 50% off 2 or more pairs of shades. This episode is brought to you by Hims. Guys, sometimes intimate moments happen spontaneously, and we'll always want to be ready so we can perform in the bedroom. Hims has treatments that can help you stay hard and last longer, giving you that boost of confidence so you can be ready whenever the mood strikes. Hims is changing men's healthcare by providing access to affordable sexual health treatments, all from the comfort of your couch. No insurance is needed. Pay one low price for your treatments, online visits, ongoing shipments, and provider messaging. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/kindafunny. That's HIMS.com/kindafunny for your personalized ED treatment options. hims.com/kindafunny. The products mentioned are chewable compounded products, which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions, details, and important safety information information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan.
Yo, what's up? Well, we're here in Tokyo. It is me, it is Roger Picorni, and we're here with the head of Team Asobi, Nico, aka Nicholas Doucette. How's it going, Nico?
Very well, thank you. Thank you for coming all the way to beautiful Japan.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us, and also thank you so much for showing us so much of the game. We're looking forward to Astro Bot. As of the time people are watching and listening to this, Astro Bot should be here, and we have a lot of questions about it. Starting off with, what's it been like seeing the ascent for Astro Bot over the years?
It's been really exciting. We've always been, very hopeful that Astro would kind of pick up some popularity. But of course, with every game we also want to be very innovative and fresh. So there's always like a bit of a reboot for us also to kind of think new ideas. Awesome. But it seems like people are expecting it, and it makes us both very excited and nervous too. In a good way. Yeah.
What did you feel? How did you feel when the initial announcement for the game happened? Right, like the internet was ablaze. Everyone was hoping that this would happen after they played Playroom, and then it finally happened. Was it heartwarming? Was it expected? What did you feel?
So we had we thought the trailer would kind of make people happy, but not to that degree. We didn't expect it was going to be like so crazy. It was at the end of the State of Play, I remember, and especially I think he also showed that actually. Like people craved for colorful games, it's been 30 years, of PlayStation history, and maybe there is like a bit of also a generation, like where people that used to play these kind of colorful games when they were teenagers playing a PS1, now maybe parents and kind of also still appreciate those games, but also enjoy them with their kids. So there might be a good connection there.
Yeah, I think pointing out that a lot of people played these games when they're teenagers, maybe during the PS1 era, I think is a very interesting thing, because I think Astro Bot, I see it, and it is a colorful, family-friendly 3D platformer, and these are games that I feel like as we go have become a bit more few and far between. Obviously, we see Nintendo is still putting out a lot of Mario. Ratchet and Clank is still out there and is very active, but I feel like we get a lot less of these games nowadays. As you've been making Astro Bot, is that a thing that comes to mind? And also, why do you think that is?
So yes, I agree with you. It's also a genre that I think we thought is has opportunities. As we made it, yes, we thought about it, because we tend to try, and with Team Asobi, we want to make games where we feel like there is a gap or a space. We're not really the kind of team who are going to go into a very crowded space, with the confidence that we can, instead we're going to be thinking, okay, how can we be different? How can we bring something that maybe hasn't been done before, or kind of be different? And that really felt like in 2024 to release a, full-on 3D platformer for PlayStation felt like a new thing, and that's good, right? And then the rest of your question was, the second question was?
Essentially, I guess, how is making Astro Bot as a 3D platformer, like, I guess, in this environment, how does that inform Astro Bot? Are you thinking about the fact that there's not as many 3D platformers out there, or are you just focused on making Astro Bot the game that it is?
No, we just focused. We're usually in our own lane. We're just thinking about what's the best way. What are the things that are important, regardless of other games or other comparisons. What's unique about PlayStation 2? Because PlayStation 2. Because. Of course, it's a high spec machine, and so when you make this kind of games, what does it mean? So for example, for us, it means like playing with physics a lot. We can throw a lot of physics, and physics are kind of fun toys. So of course, it means upping the graphics and stuff, but also the DualSense, and of course, the history of the 30 years history of characters. So it's like we really have to tailor this game to today, for PlayStation 5. So it's not, of course, a rehash, I think, of what would have been done on PS1 or PS2. Things have changed, codes have changed, and then play habits, have changed too. So for us, it's really about kind of reconstructing the vibe of these games, but with today's kind of standards.
One thing I want to ask during your awesome presentation with you and the team, you mentioned very briefly, and then you kind of corrected. You said mascot, and he said, no, it's not really a mascot. What do you see Astro as? Because I think a lot of the media and a lot of people that play it see it as a mascot of PlayStation. Do you see it that way? Was it created that way?
So the reason I corrected myself is because actually it's not something that we should decide, I feel. it's something that I think over time should grow organically. And it's like when people feel connected to that character, at that point it becomes a mascot. But I don't think you can design and plan something that would become a mascot. And I think, of course, we have hopes that it becomes at least first a famous, well-regarded PlayStation characters, next to some of the amazing other series that that PlayStation is famous for. That would be already an amazing achievement. If on top of that, the association with the hardware and the fact it's also all ages can give it like a broader appeal, of course, we'd be super happy. But we have to sort of be humble about it, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said that when you were doing the presentation, you were talking about 30 years of PlayStation, and that's kind of the connection here with all of these amazing PlayStation properties within Astro Bot and some third parties as well. Does Astro Bot live separately from PlayStation? Like, is there a future where it's just Astro Bot and there is no PlayStation characters, or is that intrinsically connected to Astro Bot in his future?
Okay, that's a really interesting question. So actually, we asked ourselves the same question making the game, and we had the debate internally. We were thinking, okay, we can't be relying on this. Yeah. We have to, spread our own wings, and the reason we added this layer, it was because it felt like, okay, but if we don't do it, actually, we have the chance to do it even in a different way. Celebrate the history in a different way, and to make people happy. So we should grasp that chance. Having said that, to answer your question, should we play that card every time? I don't think so. Mm-hmm. I think it should be if it makes sense and there is something new to say and it's really worthwhile, then yes. But if it feels like it becomes a security, a safety net, then at that point, I think it's not good. So I think. And to be honest, the core of the game was made without a PlayStation layer on top. The power-ups, the levels, the bosses, the collection mechanics, all of that can work by itself. So I think it's okay to imagine, either. But no matter what we do, we have to be innovative and we have to be like fresh. So that will kind of decide where we take it next. But I can totally imagine a world where Astro really is all about Astro and yeah.
In the same topic, what has it been like working with other PlayStation studios? You're, going in, you're, borrowing their IP, you're, applying the Astro Bot touch to it, and I'm fascinated by the response from other studios during your presentation. You mentioned that Sony Santa Monica was very, into it, and they're very passionate about it, and the things you're able to do with that, right? I almost envision it like going into a friend's toy box and playing with their toys a little bit. Has it been different working with different PlayStation studios? How has that experience gone?
I think across the board, I think it's been actually similar to the Santa Monica studio experience, whereby people were really, really supportive. Of course, different teams of publishers have different points that they care about, but it's never been a case of being overly sensitive about using their characters. It's been more a case of, oh yeah, sure. And if you use this character, then actually one important point is this attachment or this detail, that should be portrayed properly or respected. But there's been no kind of there's no shortage of just like support and joy. And I think it really speaks about this company. And I'm not being, like by saying that, I don't mean to be like, it's really genuinely like people like look out for each other and have a positive kind of similar mind and moving forward. And it's like, and I think, but the same thing now should be said the other way around. If such, other teams approached us to use Astro, we would show the same support and allow them to do that because it's only natural, right?
No, that's interesting because my brain goes to like the producer mind where it's like, oh, you're introducing so many cooks in the kitchen, right? Like, does that become messy? But it doesn't seem like that was the issue.
No, because there was trust.
Yeah.
Right. But the moment if there were several cooks in the kitchen, then it would become complicated. But because there was that trust that we will respect it and do it properly from the get-go, then it was much easier to deal with. But it's also on us to make sure that we capture that very early. So whenever we show a concept, the first thing that we show has to be feeling, the IP owners with trust. So with the PlayStation Studios, it's easier because we're all colleagues. But when we go outside to, third-party publishers, we have a long relationship. But still, there are some things that we have to be really cautious and get right. So, which is why us as players, we have to know those IPs really well. We have to know the history. We have to know what their fans liked about their IPs. So we had to do some research and to really kind of get under the skin of these games. And then more often than not, I mean, almost all the time when we presented concept, they especially the gags, because that's where you get tricky, right? You have like some dramatic IPs, and we're like, well, we're gonna make fun of it. They were very open to it, and it worked out. Yeah.
What's it been like as a PlayStation studio based in Japan, where I feel a lot of PlayStation's game development has centered in on the West when we think of like the big ones, especially like Naughty Dog or Sony Santa Monica, right? A lot of that is either California or based in either America or Europe. For Team Asobi being based in Japan, does that affect your development culture, or does that separate you out from any other PlayStation studios? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Especially I think in that respect, the COVID and fact that actually everybody adopted a remote way of working made it easier for a studio based on an island effectively to connect. In fact, I've been talking to the other studios more in the recent years than before. And I think it tells the story. Before, you expected to be physically meeting, right? Even though we had the means to, call each other, you'd have to meet physically to really exchange. Today, you can do that, more easily. And I think, the distance doesn't really feel like, a problem, anymore anyway.
Yeah, I want to ask about talking about development of your game. I was so impressed with how fast you were able to build Playroom and then now go into Astro Bot. 3.5 years or about so. Like, how do you build such a creative vibe with your team, but then also create the infrastructure to actually produce a project? And you showed the last slide, which I was blown away by. It was September 2024, and you actually were able to make that happen. Knock on wood, of course, but that's really exciting. So how were you able to build that and build that infrastructure?
You're a producer?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I can tell. Okay, so I think the first year is really, really important because that's the one where you want to put all your difficult problems behind you, right? So the prototyping is really, really key. By the time we go to these pitches, we have enough of the prototype so that the confidence that the hard stuff is worked out is okay. Because, the production issues, they've existed for ever since we made video games, right? But the creative ones, these ones can be new, right? Really brand new. So these are the ones we go to crack early. Or for example, like building the team or building an engine. These kind of things can really like slow you down later on. So these have to be tackled with really very early. But I think that the first year where we really get that creativity out, in a fast fashion, using this kind of rapid prototyping was really, really important. And then after that, it's just keeping that pace. And to your point about holding dates, it's also like, when we polish games, it's never enough time, right?
Yeah.
Honestly, like, you could continue over and over and over again, I think. So I think having a polish time that is like really long to the point that even feels like it's too long is probably right, because by the time you need that time, you get there, you will use up all that time anyway, right? So I think it's project management, also like. But one thing that is also important to mention is because the game is modular, we've been able to just like cut our cloth to really be just right. So there were some levels that felt like they didn't really add anything more. They were like a repeat of something else in terms of the experience. They felt like, well, if we have this level and that level, the user experience doesn't really get better, so you can drop that. And that time you get back is really useful because you can inject it into whatever else you want. So that's one advantage of working on a very kind of gameplay-centric game where everything is modular. When you have a story and everything is recorded and you have a lot of dependency with actors and things like that, you don't have the same flexibility. So that's one of the lucky parts about the kind of games we make, I think.
One of the things that really impressed me was when you mentioned that Team Asobi is made up of about 65 people working here. And, coming off of what Roger asked, right, you guys are putting out games at a pretty decent pace and, going from Astro's Playroom in 2020 and now this game coming out September 2024. How are you able to maintain that? And also, how do you see the future of Team Asobi going? Do you guys expect to grow by a lot? Do you guys also expect to stick with Astro Bot as the main franchise? I know there's only so much you can say, but what are your thoughts on that?
Sticking with it only doesn't have to. That we continue, and Astro has a future, and it's a franchise, yes. But I think they should be, given the chance, we should also be doing other things on the side because it's healthy. In terms of would it be if we were to grow, I think the game size would not get bigger, And if we were, for example, like very, simply, let's say if you were to double the team today, then we'd be making 2 games or maybe 2.5 in parallel. That would seem to me like a better use rather than doubling up the size of one game. Really 12 to 15 hours is enough. Right?
Perfect
right?
size for a
How
video.
many games do we have that we can't finish? I mean, I've got a pile of. So I think we're going to get to that point where we're feeling that actually we're going to get the confidence that 12 to 15 hours is okay, and it's actually if it's really really high quality and dense and it's like really like juicy, then it's fine, right?
I love that answer.
Love that.
Love that.
Nico, thank you so much for this interview.
Thank you very much.
We appreciate it.
All right.
Yep. Congratulations on the launch of Astro Bot. We're looking forward to it. Back to you.
And we are back.
Great interview,
everybody.
guys.
Thank you.
For real.
Thank you.
That was a lot of fun.
time.
I liked you answering the question. I like that he called you a producer. You're a producer, aren't you?
Yeah.
fucking
That made
fun,
me happy.
dude.
That made me happy. No, that was a great time, and it was great sitting down with Nico. And really quick, I know we talked about it a little bit, but I just want to talk about the future of Astro Bot, right? Like, what is the future of Astro Bot? Of course, he alludes to the potentiality of maybe they don't focus on PlayStation as much if it feels like a crutch in the future. After finishing this game, after playing this game, I'm like, no, the Astro Bot is firmly in the PlayStation house and family, and is going to at least reference PlayStation a little bit in every single one of their games. But what do you see the future of Astro in the future? Do you think that is there a world where Astro will not be connected to PlayStation one day, or is this just always going to be the same thing? We're going to say Astro, we're going to say PlayStation in the same sentence.
I think he's connected the entire time, right?
Yeah.
Even if you were to, I mean, I think he could stand on his own as a platformer for sure. And again, if you continue to give him love and make great games, that's going to happen. But even still, you'd have the coins are always going to have the PlayStation sacred symbols on them, right? Like I connect that enough to being PlayStation. I think the ship is, or whatever he's doing, is always going to be a console or something. That's always going to be there. It doesn't have to be the overt. You're saving the bots dressed as the Bloodborne character, or whatever. You know what I mean? You don't need that necessarily, but I still think that DNA is there.
You do. I think it's PlayStation forever, and I think that that's the right move. I'm not even joking. It's like the PlayStation stuff stands out. The rest of the designs do not. So they know that. They're going to continue it. I feel like people love the PlayStation stuff for good reason. I love how well this represents PlayStation, whereas PlayStation's weird. Its history is very weird. There's a lot of games that don't make sense, and licensing gets in the way and all that stuff, and you could tell they're trying their best to represent as much as they can. I think they're going to continue to do that. What excites me about the future of Astro Bot is I feel like we're already in it. Like, I don't think that we need to wait for a sequel. Like, this game is going to get DLC. We already know that. What does that look like? That excites me. The things that weren't in this game. We didn't get Ghost of Tsushima. We didn't get Final Fantasy. We didn't get a lot of different things. We didn't get Last of Us. We didn't get Spider-Man. All those things, different challenges, different obstacles for them to figure out, whether it's licensing or gameplay or otherwise.
Those guys on the cover of the next Astro Bot.
But that's it, right? It's like, I feel like that is very, very exciting. But to me, I hope that we get DLC. Obviously, we're getting the speed runs and all that stuff. I hope we get another world. Like, I hope we get another VIP bot. Like, that's dreaming, but I think that they could pull it off. But what the dream for me would be for Astro Bot 2, whatever they end up calling it, to have a Smash Brothers like rollout plan where the announcements are over a year announcing different VIP bots and getting us excited, and like having it be like a Sakurai type deep dive into the history of that franchise or something in a YouTube video, ending in announcing who the next one is and like building that hype. Like, PlayStation has an opportunity to have a marketing hype cycle that every state of play is announcing a new VIP bot for the next game. That could be so damn cool.
Lots of people are telling you that Jin was in the game. I missed the Ghost.
He means
I was hung up on Spider-Man. I know. I just want to make sure we can clarify.
I meant a VIP level, like actually playing through with all the
again, like
gameplay.
same thing with like I was talking about like a Last of Us, right? Of like giving you that thing to go through.
Totally.
I think 1000% the future of Astro Bot is doing this, what they're doing, right? The PlayStation crossovers and stuff. And honestly, I can't wait for it, right? Like Tim mentioned, there's stuff still left on the table that I think you can do really cool things with. I would love a Shadow of the Colossus level. I would love a Ghost of Tsushima level. I would love a Final Fantasy level. I would love all that stuff. And I think, I would love to see it again in 3 years, right? Like, I think if the DLC we get is limited to like a few more challenge levels and a few more rescuable bots, I'm actually very okay with it, because that might mean, cool, by 2027 we're playing Astro Bot 2, and that might line up with a PS6, right? Like, I think there's for what we talked with Nico about, there's such a good thing to have going here, and I think part of that is locking in and going, all right, what is right for the IP that we have? And I think Astro Bot, this goes back to the conversation we had during the review. Astro Bot as a character, I kind of agree with Tim as far as Astro Bot not necessarily having like the it factor of Mario or Sonic or even like a Ratchet, right? Like there's a Astrobot is more of a an avatar style thing. And I think what's strong about that is that you can imprint different IP to it. You can put
He's a conduit. To
he's
IP.
he's a conduit,
Okay.
right?
I was
He's
like, how is he blue? Like,
no, not blue people avatar.
Okay,
Yeah,
gotcha.
no, he's a tortilla chip. You're just putting in different dips.
I love that. No, I love that. That's great.
And like I love tortilla chips, and tortilla chips are popular and great because like you can get all these different dips in there and fucking do so many things with it, and that's Astrobot.
Yeah. Sometimes it's all you have in the house. That's all you know. You eat it by yourself.
Listen, if you want to eat plain potato or tortilla chips, you got Astrobot Rescue Mission. But yeah, no, I think that's the future of Astrobot. That said, I don't think that's the future. I don't think that's the sole future of Team Asobi.
Yeah.
I think I think they're gonna grow. I think they're going to be making multiple games at the same time. I think they're gonna have a good cadence of, all right, Astrobot 1 year, the next year we're gonna have a spin-off thing, right? Or like an Astro Kart, and that's the other thing is there's so many things you can do with Astro. That
Yeah, I also could see them expanding in the next one. Of course, focusing on PlayStation, expanding maybe Astrobot where he has, I don't know, a cousin, like whatever it is. Like he has
Please, cousin bot, help us.
he has a girlfriend or whatever it is. Like he has
Diego bot.
We create like another formation of bots that are a different faction or whatever, and then that gets a spin-off. Like, you know what I mean? Like I think there's ways around this where the core Astrobot can be all about PlayStation, but then you can have a smaller title if they really wanted to, if they wanted to spread their wings and try new creative character designs and say, hey, we actually could do this. We can make this happen. I think they could do this in a spin-off, but I don't think the main Astrobot is ever going to be outside of PlayStation.